We are now talking to USA Today college football and basketball national columnist, Dan Wolken. Dan, what's up, man?
Just another day in paradise.
You look like it. You look like you're so excited and so calm and collective.
It's been a long week. Getting to the end of the season, but we're going to get there.
Absolutely. How are you and your family doing, obviously, from COVID-19 and all the crazy stuff that's been going on the past year?
Oh, I mean, can't complain. Everything's been all right. So making it through, coming out the other side of it. So it's all good.
So why don't we get into the Michigan and Ohio State game? That game was supposed to be a close game. It was supposed to be fun to watch, and it really was just dominated by Michigan. The last 2 years, and Ohio State really dominated those games against Michigan for years. I think it was like 7 or 8 times they completely dominated, and Michigan couldn't beat them. And now all of a sudden, back-to-back years, Jim Harbaugh and Michigan knock off the Ohio State Buckeyes, obviously a Heisman Trophy candidate. So what are your thoughts going into the game? Did you think Ohio was the favorites? I didn't really check out your column for that. And what did you think about the game? Did you really think that Michigan was going to have a game like that defensively the way they did?
Yeah, I actually picked Michigan in the game. Just watching the two teams all season long, I just felt like there was something off with Ohio State. It's a great collection of talent, but when you watch them week in and week out, it just did not seem like they were playing to their potential. Just a lot of kind of messing around. It seemed like they had to have things perfectly go their way to be able to be explosive offensively, which is what they're built to do. I felt like Michigan all season has kind of been very consistent in how they approach the game. They've been physical, very good defensively. And it just, to me, looked like Michigan, not as talented, but knows who they are, knows what they want to do. Ohio State just looked a little bit more, I think, unsure all season long. And so I was not really surprised that Michigan won the game. And what I was surprised by was that they were able to throw the ball as effectively as they did. They really had a couple, 3 big plays in the passing game that turned it in their favor. And then Ohio State just played really tight. They coached tight. They played tight. In the second half, I think Ryan Day really made some coaching mistakes, punting when he should have gone for it. It was just not a very confident performance by Ohio State. And I think Michigan right now just kind of has their number.
So we've been waiting a lot of time at the beginning of the season. Michigan wasn't really playing the biggest games on their schedule. They were playing down at teams a lot, but in the last couple of weeks, they've really picked it up, and you're really seeing a more complete team. Do you think this is a better team than the one they had last year that finished undefeated?
Yeah, it's interesting. Going into the year, you wouldn't have said that because they lost so many guys, especially off their defense. They lost a couple key offensive linemen. But I do think this team is better this year. I think they're better equipped. If they get into a playoff game, let's just say against Georgia in the national championship, I think they're better equipped to give a good accounting of themselves. I'm not going to sit here and predict they're going to win the game, but I do think that with the way they've played this year in the running game, and also they can throw the ball a little bit. Donovan Edwards is a great backfield threat, can come out of the flat and make something happen. I think Blake Corum, he didn't play hardly at all in that game against Ohio State, but if you've watched him week after week, he's really kind of been the engine of their offense. J.J. McCarthy, he was a backup last year, got the starting job this year, and I do think he's had some struggles, but I think he's got more ceiling and potential to make big plays. So I like this Michigan team. I like the way they've played. This is an era of wide open spread offenses, but I do think it's telling that Georgia and Michigan, the two teams who kind of play the other way, they've kind of zagged while everyone else has zigged, leaning on their defense, leaning on running game. They're 1-2 right now as we go into the last weekend, and very physical teams. And I still think people love the spread and they love wide open offense, but physicality, line of scrimmage, that still matters in college football.
Dan, I don't know how the College Board really decides the points and how each of these teams are rated after one game every single week. It doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, obviously Georgia right now has 1,570 points. Michigan has 1,516. TCU has 1,449, and obviously USC 1,382. When you look at all four of these teams, and obviously this college playoff, and Georgia by far is the best team in the country. It's not even close. Even TCU right now has played undefeated football. This is a very good program, very well run over the last couple of years. And then USC, Lincoln Riley. Everybody thought it was going to take a little while before Lincoln Riley would have taken this team to a top 4, top 5 team. But this year they have fantastic weapons. Their defense has played well. They have a very good offensive line. Are you surprised USC is right there in fourth? And do you think Ohio State right now, if they win their next few games, do you think Ohio State can somehow get back into this college playoff?
Well, I guess I'm not terribly surprised about USC. I think I actually predicted them to make the playoff.
Wow.
In the preseason because, I didn't think the Pac-12 was going to be particularly strong. I have a ton of regard and respect for the kind of coach Lincoln Riley is. And of course, because of the transfer portal, the relaxed rules on transfers now in college sports, he was able to bring his quarterback with him. And Caleb Williams is an amazing quarterback who has to come back to school next year. But I would say in the 2024 NFL draft, I mean, he's probably going to be the number one pick. And I think he is the reason they're here very clearly. They had some talent at USC, but because they were able to get him in, he makes everything go. He's just a special player. A big fan of the way that they've been able to turn it around this year. And, I think it's unfortunate for them that they lost the game to Utah in Salt Lake City on a 2-point play at the end of the game. But they have now a chance to avenge that and play their way in. I think for Ohio State, it's definitely either or. USC – let me put it this way. It breaks down that Georgia and Michigan are going to be in no matter what happens this weekend. I still think TCU is going to be in, even if they lose the Big 12 championship game to Kansas State. So it's really between USC and Ohio State. If USC loses, I think there's probably going to be in that committee room a discussion about who's had the better season, but Ohio State with one loss will probably back their way in. USC would have 2 losses at that point, both to Utah, and I think that probably would keep them out. There's nothing more Ohio State can do at this point. They're not playing this weekend. I think it would be unfortunate and bad if they basically get in without having to do anything, but that's kind of the stupid system that we've got right now. It'll be better, I think, in the 12-team playoff era, but we're not there yet. USC's got to win to basically end all the speculation and conversation, and I think they will.
So what about the two teams right on the other side, on the outside, the 2 losses, Alabama and Tennessee? There's a lot of controversy, say, if both TCU and USC lose, like which one of them you think would get in. Now, Alabama will get to play they won't, and neither of them will get to play for their conference championships. They're already stuck where they are, 2 losses. So do you see paths for either one of them, and who would get the tiebreaker, you think, with 2 losses?
No, I actually don't see a path for either of them. I mean, Tennessee, the issue with them, or one of the issues with them, is that their quarterback, Hendon Hooker, who was so terrific for most of the year, he's got a torn ACL. I think Tennessee would be ahead of Alabama if not for that, but it's irrelevant either way. I mean, look, Alabama's sitting there number 6. They have 2 losses. They could potentially pass USC, but I don't think they're going to pass. I don't think there's any way they could pass TCU. TCU comes into this thing undefeated at 12-0. TCU's played a good schedule. They've got good wins. If they lose to Kansas State in the Big 12 title game, that would be a loss to a top 10 team. Kansas State would be in the top 10 at that point. And they've already beaten Kansas State once earlier this year. So I just don't see how the committee could say if TCU loses and is sitting there at 12-1, that Alabama at 10-2 should go in over TCU. I just don't think there's any way that could happen. So I think Alabama's out. I really think this is all just about USC versus Ohio State.
We are talking to USA Today college football and basketball national columnist Dan Wolken. I want to get into college basketball. Obviously, it's still early, But Duke has a really good recruiting class. Shire's first year, taking over for Coach K, losing against Purdue the way they did a few days ago. It was pretty embarrassing. Purdue, obviously ranked 5th right now in the country. They have a pretty good class coming back, and a lot of people think they're every year in and year out. They're a very good defensive team. They're very big, but they always die out in the Sweet 16 or the Elite 8. They never get into the Final Four. They never do. Do you think this year could be the year that Purdue really gets themselves into the Final Four with the team that they have set up?
I mean, look, anybody can make a Final Four.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing in college basketball, especially in this era. Anybody can make a run. Purdue's got a really good program. I mean, they've been terrific the last several years. It has been a disappointment for them in the tournament, but I just think it's too early to speculate. College basketball is just so even right now in the landscape, and the tournament has always been a bit of a crapshoot anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's even more like that in this era right now. Duke, very young team. They're playing pretty good defensively. I actually like a lot of what Shire's done, but they have a little trouble scoring. Some of their young guys who are highly rated are just not ready. We'll see in March. That's a long time, a lot of games between now and then, and all these teams are going to evolve and develop. Duke's got a lot of upside, but Purdue's very, very good. And, you beat Gonzaga and Duke back-to-back to win a big tournament like they did out in Portland. You're a serious team. But whether, they're going to make a Final Four, it's going to depend on matchups. It's going to depend on luck and health and all that stuff. But they're really a consistently good program, and they do present a lot of problems.